Iran has attacked Israel with 180 missiles. They've managed to kill just one person with all this firepower, but this is just the beginning. Israel has vowed to hit back. They will most likely target Iran's nuclear facilities. There's no telling where it will go from here. Oil prices are already going up. Airlines aren't flying over the region. World powers are picking sides and sending reinforcements. At least Israel's allies are. As we track these developments, we're also addressing the questions that many of you have been asking today. How did Iranian missiles land in Israel? Did the Iron Dome fail? Was the Mossad headquarters attacked? Who will win this war? Who has more firepower? How are the odds stacked? And what is India's position in this conflict? As of now, New Delhi has expressed concern and questioned Israel's war tactics in Gaza. Meanwhile, Russia has struck a trade deal with Pakistan. How should India see it? And a bird in Europe has come back from extinction. We decided to wrap up with a story of hope after all the news of war. First, as always, the headlines. Israel bans the chief of the United Nations from entering the country, declares Antonio Guterres persona non grata, accuses him of failing to condemn Iran's missile attack on Israel. As tensions escalate in West Asia, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni calls a virtual meeting of the G7 leaders to discuss the crisis. Ukraine withdraws from the eastern town of Vuhledar, handing Russia one of its most significant territorial gains in weeks. Moscow has been trying to capture this town since its invasion in February 2022. Kiev's withdrawal raises wider concerns over its ability to defend its front line. In Pakistan, Imran Khan's party, the PTI, protests across Punjab defying the ban on public gatherings by the Maryam Nawaz government. The PTI workers demand the release of Imran Khan. Police arrest few of the party leaders and disperse the demonstrators. Imran Khan, the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, has been in jail since August last year. Samsung to cut thousands of jobs. 1 in 10 posts could be axed. The layoffs will hit operations in Southeast Asia, Australia and New Zealand. Samsung is the world's largest memory chip maker. The South Korean firm employs around 250,000 workers. More than half of its total workforce is abroad. And Somalia bans plastic bags, imposing a long-delayed ban on single-use plastic to help tackle pollution. The law was first announced in February. Somalia is the latest African country to join the fight against non-biodegradable waste. Kenya has one of the world's toughest bans on plastic bags.
Iran made a big mistake tonight, and it will pay for it.
"180. That's the number of missiles Iran fired at Israel last night. It was a massive attack. And Israel says it won't go unanswered. Benjamin Netanyahu has declared that Iran will pay for this operation. So with every passing hour, the situation in West Asia is becoming more tense. Just take a look at the pictures from last night. These may look like fireflies, but these are Iranian ballistic missiles. Those pictures were from Jerusalem, but across Israel, skies were filled with missiles yesterday. They were flying from all directions. It was a sweeping attack. Every major Israeli city was targeted. Tel Aviv, Jaffa, Nahariya, you name it, Iranian missiles were everywhere. Sounds of explosions filled the air for several minutes as Israel launched countermeasures and its anti-missile system swung into action. Israel says there were no major casualties. It was largely able to fend off this attack, but Tehran is challenging this claim. It says 90% of the Iranian missiles hit their targets. That's what Iran is saying. 90% hit their targets. It's difficult to verify either version at this point. There are multiple conflicting reports. Like always in the fog of war, truth is the first casualty. But one fact is indisputable. Iranian missiles did breach Israeli defenses. Several pictures like these have emerged. Missile shrapnel was found at multiple spots across Israel, also in the West Bank, killing at least one Palestinian.
لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله فوت يا شباب فوتوا صراحة
Some missile debris fell in Jordan as well. 2 people suffered injuries there. This is Iran's second direct attack on Israel in less than 6 months. Tehran named this operation True Promise 2. True Promise 1 happened in the month of April this year, and it was very different. Back then, Israel had carried out an operation in Syria. Israel had launched a strike targeting an Iranian diplomatic mission in Syria, so Tehran retaliated. It launched more than 100 missiles. It was quite dramatic. But it was a performative strike. The idea was not to inflict damage. It was to be seen as striking back, to be seen as doing something. Compared to that, yesterday's attack was far more significant, both in terms of scale and ambition. It was meant to hurt. While Israel managed to contain the damage, tensions remain high. Israelis are anxious about what may come next.
So last night I was a bit afraid because my parents have just arrived here from Australia for Chagim, and so I felt responsible for their safety. All my friends in Australia and from overseas, I felt that they were more afraid because they kept on sending messages, are you okay, are you okay, are you okay?
Well, it was scary, especially the children and the kids started crying, but we passed it. It's not the first time, I hope this is the last time. And I hope that Israel will react very soon and strong.
So that's the mood in Israel. People are tense, but as you can see, they're out and about. What about the other side? People in Iran are celebrating. When the attack was announced, Iranians took to the streets in large numbers. There were celebrations in Iraq as well, also in Lebanon and Gaza. So Iran and its supporters in West Asia are celebrating. But even they know that this is just the beginning. Iran and Israel are formally at war. They've been fighting for a while now. Netanyahu was quick to issue a statement. He said Iran has made a big mistake and he wants revenge.
The regime in Iran does not understand our determination to defend ourselves and our determination to retaliate against our enemies. We will keep to the rule we have determined. Whoever attacks us, we attack them.
Netanyahu was quick to follow through on this threat. Today, Israel intensified its campaign in Lebanon. Its troops entered Lebanese territory. They clashed with Hezbollah fighters. Hezbollah claims to have repelled the Israeli troops and killed 8 Israeli soldiers today. But Netanyahu remains undeterred. He has deployed more troops for the Lebanon operation and intensified the bombing campaign. Israel says it has destroyed more than 150 targets. Lebanon's capital, Beirut, was bombed again. Its skyline was filled with smoke today. What about Iran? Well, Iran is not backing down either. Its president issued a statement today. That's Masoud Pezeshkian, the Iranian president. He said Iran's operation was a response to Israel's actions in Lebanon, the attacks against the Hezbollah. Pezeshkian says Iran will strike again if Israel does not stop.
If Israel want to respond to the last night's attack, they will face a more severe response. Israel's Iron Dome is more fragile than glass, and the world needs to stop them and put this apartheid regime in their place.
انجام بدن.
So both Israel and Iran are making fresh threats. No side wants to retreat. There's little room for diplomacy at the moment. As things stand, this war will continue. This is exactly what Netanyahu wanted. I know it may sound strange. Who would want 180 missiles being fired at them? Well, that's Benjamin Netanyahu for you. He sees this escalation as an opportunity to do what? To reshape West Asia, to settle his scores with Iran. Just look at his actions over the last year. Excessive force in Gaza, direct attacks on Tehran, killing the Hezbollah chief in Beirut. All of it confirms one thing. He was needling Iran all the time, basically spoiling for a direct confrontation, and now he has got it. The Israeli Prime Minister addressed a security meeting yesterday. He promised to make Iran pay.
Iran made a big mistake tonight, and it will pay for it. The regime in Iran does not understand our determination to defend ourselves and our determination to retaliate against our enemies. Apparently, there are those in Tehran who do not understand this either. They will understand. We will keep to the rule we have determined. Whoever attacks us, we attack them.
That's a strong statement, and expect Netanyahu to follow through. He couldn't do that the last time. Iran launched its first direct attack in April this year, but Israel's response was limited, a bit half-hearted. This time, he is in a better position. Netanyahu is more popular at home. His allies have closed ranks behind him, and on the battlefield, he's making constant gains. So it's the perfect opportunity for the Israeli Prime Minister, and he knows it. This week, he spoke to the Iranian people directly. He hinted at a regime change in Tehran.
But you know one simple thing. Iran's tyrants don't care about your future, but you do. When Iran is finally free, and that moment will come a lot sooner than people think, everything will be different. Our two ancient peoples, the Jewish people and the Persian people, will finally be at peace.
Now, let's be clear. It's not like people in Iran were logging on to X to see Netanyahu's speech. It wasn't meant for Iranians. It was meant for the world. Netanyahu was basically broadcasting his intentions. He knows that Iran's regime is weak, so he's looking to capitalize. The question is how? How will he do it? Reports say Israel will attack Iran within days. And the targets? A lot of theories are floating around. Iran's nuclear facilities are said to be on the table. So are its oil refineries. Now, these would be high-profile targets. If Israel attacks them, if Israel attacks Iran's nuclear facilities and oil refineries, it wouldn't just be an escalation, it would be an all-out war. Israel also has lower impact options, like destroying air defense systems or conducting targeted assassinations. Let's look at the specifics. Iran has around 8 nuclear sites. Some are military complexes, others are so-called research centers. Netanyahu has always talked about destroying these sites, but is it tactically possible? Well, Iran's main nuclear site is Natanz. And to get there, Israeli fighter jets must fly deep into Iran, meaning they must evade Iran's air defenses. That's the first challenge, but let's assume they make it. The nuclear facility is 328 feet below the ground. Even American bombs cannot penetrate that. So the operation itself is quite a dangerous one, especially if you're doing it alone. Which brings us to the second possibility, oil sites. Iran has around 98 oil fields. They also have 10 oil refineries. If you destroy them, you can cut off Iran's lifeline. Just one problem here. Iran will retaliate. Reports say that they have issued a warning to the US. The Iranians have told the US that if you attack our refineries, we will burn oil facilities in the Gulf, like those in Saudi Arabia or the UAE. And it has happened before. In 2019, Iran's proxies attacked Saudi refineries. It led to a fall in Riyadh's oil output. So which option will Netanyahu choose? What will he strike? It depends on two things. First, how soon does he want a war? Does he want to escalate gradually, or is he itching to go? If it's the latter, if he wants an all-out war immediately, expect a large-scale attack. Secondly, will Joe Biden back him? Israel needs American support for an all-out war. We saw indications of that yesterday. Iran fired 180 missiles at Israel. That's just 6% of their total arsenal. Yet Israel needed American help to shoot them down. So imagine a full-scale war. Netanyahu will certainly need Biden's help. But last time he refused to give that. In April, Biden reportedly told Netanyahu to take the win. Israel has shot down nearly 99% of Iran's rockets, so Biden said, don't escalate. Of course, Netanyahu did it anyway because he understands how Biden thinks. The US will never abandon Israel in case of an all-out war. It's only a question of explicit support, like what happened in Lebanon. Washington kept saying, don't escalate. But when Israel killed the Hezbollah chief, Washington said, good job.
With regard to Lebanon, we've been working tirelessly with partners to avoid a full-blown war and to move to a diplomatic process that would allow Israelis and Lebanese alike to go back to their homes. On Gaza, Hassan Nasrallah was a brutal terrorist whose many victims included Americans, Israelis, Lebanon, the region, the world are safer without him.
Same applies here. Biden says don't escalate, but if Netanyahu does, Biden will support him anyway. That's how this equation has played out. If it happens again, the consequences will be dire. Every country is bracing for it. Some countries have picked sides. Some remain neutral, but all of them are watching this closely. Because this is West Asia, conflict here affects the entire world. Most Western countries are backing Israel. They have criticized Iran for yesterday's attack.
Make no mistake, the United States is fully supportive of Israel.
We stand with Israel and we recognize her right to self-defense in the face of this aggression.
As expected, the West supports Israel no matter what. But are they also helping Israel militarily? Well, the US sent some firepower this week. They have deployed thousands of extra soldiers in West Asia. Their total strength is now 43,000 US soldiers in West Asia. More warplanes have also been sent, like your F-15s, F-16s and F-22s. Plus, you have the big warships. One carrier strike group is already in the region. It is led by the USS Abraham Lincoln. Meanwhile, a second carrier is heading there, the USS Harry Truman. So American firepower has nearly doubled. And what's their mission? One is to defend Israel, and two, to possibly help with evacuations. You see, more than 86,000 Americans live in Lebanon. Washington is asking them to return home.
American citizens in Lebanon should follow the guidance from the State Department, which is to find civilian commercial means to depart, because in extremis, we may not be able to get them out safely.
The UK is doing the same. They're sending 700 soldiers to Cyprus, which is an island country off Lebanon's coast. Again, the official reason is evacuation. There are nearly 6,000 Britons living in Lebanon. London has asked them to leave immediately. France has the same strategy. They helped Israel shoot down Iranian missiles. They're also sending a warship to the Eastern Mediterranean. What for? For evacuations, they say. So the West is basically covering all bases. They're backing Israel, they're pushing for de-escalation, and at the same time, they're making contingency plans and getting their people out. What about the other side? Well, Russia's role is quite interesting here. Reports say Iran informed Moscow before launching this strike. We cannot verify this information, but the timing is certainly interesting. Russia's Prime Minister visited Iran this week. He met Iran's president on Monday, and the next day, on Tuesday, the attack happened. So did Tehran have Putin's blessings? Or was it just a coincidence? With Vladimir Putin, you never know. But either way, he's been critical of Israel. Moscow blamed yesterday's attack on America's failures. They said Biden was clearly helpless. So that's where Russia is. Then you have China. Beijing has pitched itself as a champion of Palestine. So they too have slammed Israel. China said the war in Gaza is the root cause of the wider escalation. So a Gaza ceasefire is top priority. Now the problem here is pretty clear. The West is all in with Israel. They have no influence over Iran or Hezbollah. On the other side, it's the same. Russia and China are all in with Iran, so they have no influence over Israel. So what's the way out? Who can possibly negotiate a de-escalation? Maybe the Gulf states. Last time they helped Israel shoot down Iranian drones. This time, there are no such indications, but they are calling for dialogue.
And it's unfortunate, the escalation that we've seen. The kingdom's position, of course, is one of de-escalation and of dialogue. and of resolving these challenges. Mainly because this is something that's regional and is in proximity to many countries that want to see a more prosperous future.
Their concern is mainly financial. It's not emotional or political. Look at this recent US media reports. It said Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman said that he does not care about Palestine. But his young citizens do. And that's why he's opposing Israel. Of course, Riyadh has denied these reports, but it tells you what the sentiment really is. It's not about justice or solidarity. It is about business. And wars near oil fields and trade routes are never good business. Which brings us to India. India has expressed concern at the recent escalation. India has also opposed a regional war. But is there will to mediate? Will India mediate? Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar was asked this question. He says India is ready to mediate. He also questioned Israel's war tactics in Gaza.
We understand that Israel had a need to respond. But we also believe that any response by any country has to take into account international humanitarian law. And we are very much concerned at the possibility of a broadening of the conflict, not just what happened in Lebanon, but also, I referred earlier to the Houthis and the Red Sea. And, to some extent, anything that happens between Iran and Israel. If there are things to be said and passed on and passed back, I think those are all contributions that we can make, and we do.
India has a lot at stake here. There are 9 million Indians living and working in West Asia. More than 4,000 live in Lebanon. Their safety will be top priority. New Delhi has already advised Indians in Lebanon to leave. Yesterday, they also issued an advisory in Iran. Citizens have been asked to exercise caution and restrict travel. India may have an interest here, but mediating won't be easy. On the one hand, India is accused of arming Israel. On the other, India is holding joint drills with Iran. It's a unique but difficult position. Now let's turn inward. Sometimes it can feel that everything is happening in a far-off place, the other side of the planet, so maybe it won't matter to you. Well, sadly, that is never the case. No matter who you are, no matter what you do, an Iran-Israel war will affect you. You will feel the pinch. And it has already begun. Whenever chaos breaks out in West Asia, the first thing to get affected is oil. The world depends on this region for a steady supply of oil, and any escalations trigger a price hike. The Iranian attack sent oil prices soaring. Brent crude, the global oil benchmark, was up by over 3% at one point. It had crossed the $75 per barrel mark, touching its highest level in a month. The price has receded a bit since then to just over $74 a barrel, but that's still about 1% up. And this is nothing compared to what a full-blown war will do, what an escalation would do from here. Now, you may think it won't matter to you. So what if a war breaks out and Israel destroys Iranian oil facilities, like they're reportedly planning to do? You may think that my country doesn't trade with Iran anyway, so why does it matter? Things won't change. Well, again, sadly, it doesn't work like that. You see, Iran has been selling oil to a number of countries. Despite all the sanctions against it, Iran still sells oil. And this oil reportedly finds its way to Chinese refineries. China is the world's largest importer of oil. And it won't stop buying oil even if Iran suddenly implodes. If that happens, if Iran implodes, China will just change suppliers. They'll buy from elsewhere. They will increase imports from other sources and cause prices to surge. So if the war escalates, your oil will get more expensive. Petrol, diesel, kerosene, pick your poison, everything will get more expensive, and that means inflation. Oil inflation will lead to overall inflation. Increased fuel costs mean that transportation becomes expensive. Ships charge more for cargo. Trucking firms charge more to transport goods, and soon your little made-in-China plastic spoon becomes twice as expensive. The cost of everything goes up. And the whole world is back to 2022, back to dealing with a cost of living crisis. We were just coming out of an inflation spiral. Just 2 weeks ago, the US Federal Reserve cut interest rates. Things were looking up, so the Fed decided to slash rates. But you can forget about all of that if this war escalates. Inflation will go up, so the Fed will go back to raising rates. Every country will most likely follow suit. meaning all your loans will get more expensive. Home loan unaffordable, personal loan unsustainable, credit card debt downright brutal. This will be the case for every single country again. And the true cost will only become evident after a few months, because inflation moves after a bit of a lag. The most immediate change might be to airfares. The airspace over Israel was shut during the missile rain. It was subsequently opened. But airlines are not taking any chances. And rightly so. Flights have been diverted. If the fighting escalates, West Asia will become a no-fly zone. Flights will be cancelled or rerouted, making air travel more expensive almost immediately. Like I said, this has already begun. Airlines like Lufthansa, KLM and Swiss have suspended flights. Some flights from Germany to India were turned around. As things stand, you can expect more of this in the days ahead. So if your next vacation is not around the Pacific, airfares will surge. Basically, a war makes everything worse. And we know this. We've seen this before. When Russia invaded Ukraine, we know how it plays out. But it's also out of our control. It really depends on Iran and Israel, on what they decide to do. The rest of us will just be the ones stuck holding the bill. Every time Israel is attacked, you hear about the Iron Dome, the impenetrable shield. It's basically an air defense system. It ensures that projectiles do not hit Israeli targets. Instead, they're blown up in the sky. After the attack in April, everyone praised the Iron Dome. But this time, there is no such celebration. Some Iranian users are, in fact, mocking it. The videos make one thing clear. A lot of Iranian missiles broke through the air defenses. They managed to hit Israeli soil. They couldn't damage much, except for the reputation of the Iron Dome. But Iran showed that Israel's airspace can be breached. So how did they do it? What changed from the last time? Well, first, some background. Israel has a multi-layer air defense system. The first is obviously the Iron Dome. It shoots down rockets and small projectiles. Its range is 4 to 70 kilometers. That's the Iron Dome, the first layer. The second layer is called David's Sling. It can take out long-range rockets and cruise missiles. The range is up to 300 kilometers. And finally, you have the Arrow system, Arrow 1 and 2. These take out medium and long-range ballistic missiles and range up to 2,400 kilometers. In April, the Iron Dome did the heavy lifting, but this time it was the other systems. Iran says 90% of their projectiles hit the target. Israel says the majority was shot down. As expected, two different versions from two different sides. But pictures do not lie. There is clearly more physical damage this time around. The question is, how did it happen? Because of three main reasons. First, the intensity of the attack. The US government says this one was twice as big as the last one.
Certainly, this was a significant attack, probably about twice the size in terms of scope of what we saw earlier. But again, we're still assessing the outcomes of this.
It's simple logic. If you fire more missiles, you have more chances of hitting the target. That's what happened here. Some of the projectiles will sneak through. Which brings us to reason number 2, the type of projectiles. In April, Iran fired mostly rockets and drones. These are not rapid flyers. They take their time to reach the target. The drones, for example, took 9 hours to fly from Iran to Israel, 9 hours, so the Iron Dome made short work of it. But this time, Iran stepped up. They fired 180 ballistic missiles. Now, these are lethal weapons. First, they're fired up to the Earth's atmosphere, sometimes even beyond the Earth's atmosphere. There, the payload separates from the rocket, and finally, it plunges towards its target, a bit like throwing a stone up in the air. Imagine the speed and the force created by such a fall. It makes intercepting them very difficult. Iran used 2 versions of these ballistic missiles, the medium-range Shahab-3 and the hypersonic Fateh-1. Hypersonic missiles can travel 5 times faster than sound. That's 6,100 kilometers per hour. Such missiles can reach Israel in 12 minutes. Do you see the difference? 9 hours in April, 12 minutes yesterday, so the speed made interception difficult. Finally, reason number 3, the lack of warnings. In April, Iran informed the West days in advance, so they had time to prepare their defense. And this time, there were no warnings. The US and Israel had no clue until hours before the attack. So Iran had the element of surprise, which is why they had more success than the last time. As a strategy, it makes sense because air defense is expensive business. One Arrow missile that Israel uses, one Arrow missile costs $3.5 million. One David sling costs $1 million. But Iran's missiles are much cheaper, just $100,000 per shot. So the math works out in Iran's favor. It makes sense to exhaust Israel's defenses. But also remember, Israel has American financial support. Washington will help them restock. Nonetheless, yesterday's attack made a couple of things quite clear. One, Israel's defenses are not impenetrable. With the right weapons and tactics, you can hit them. And secondly, Iran has learned from its last attack, hence the decision to ditch the slow drones and use ballistic missiles. And they have more in stock. Iran is said to have 3,000 ballistic missiles. Only a fraction was unleashed on Israel yesterday. In many conflicts, it may be enough to establish deterrence, but here it may trigger more attacks. When Iran fired 180 missiles last night, its target was military infrastructure in Israel, including air bases, radar installations, and the Mossad headquarters. Mossad is Israel's foreign intelligence service. It is considered a crucial military asset for Israel. Iran fired 2 missiles targeting Mossad headquarters, but neither hit the building. Instead, there was collateral damage in nearby civilian areas. The Mossad headquarters are located in Tel Aviv's densely populated neighborhood. So one missile hit a parking lot and another a school, leaving huge craters and big questions in their wake. Here's a report.
A crater 30 feet deep and 50 feet wide. This is the result of one of Iran's 180 missiles, some of which hit Israel's heavily populated center last night. This crater is located in a parking lot. It's close to a cinema complex. But this civilian area wasn't the missile's original target. It was the Mossad headquarters, located less than 100 feet away from the crater. Mossad stands for the Institute for Intelligence and Special Operations in Hebrew. This is Israel's foreign intelligence service. It was established in 1949. Now, Mossad has a workforce of around 7,000 people and has earned a reputation for its audacious espionage. Its officials influence regional political dynamics, run crucial operations, and build its network abroad. Mossad is seen as an important military asset for Israel. So it's not surprising that when Iran attacked Israel's military targets like its air bases in Nevatim and Hadzor, radar installations and tank groupings, Mossad was also on the hit list. Iran's top military officer Mohammad Bagheri says Mossad was a target, but it was not hit. What it hit instead was the civilian area around the headquarters that became collateral damage. The Mossad headquarters are located in Tel Aviv's Glilot neighborhood. This area is densely populated. It's packed with residential and commercial buildings. According to reports, at least 2 missiles aimed at Mossad caused damage near it. One missile hit a road near the intelligence service building, leading to the huge crater. The second exploded near a school in a town in central Israel and caused extensive damage to the building and created another large crater outside. No casualties or injuries have been reported so far. But the attack targeting Mossad raises a lot of questions, not just for Iran, but also Israel. The Mossad may be considered a part of military infrastructure, but its headquarters are located in a busy civilian area. So, when it's seen as a military target, this poses heavy risks to the bustling city with civilians around it. Critics say that this is a strategic choice for Israel. Its very location offers Mossad protection. The Mossad headquarters rarely come under attack. But rare doesn't mean never. On September 25th, Hezbollah fired a ballistic missile targeting Mossad headquarters. This attack came after the recent attacks in Lebanon, where pagers and other wireless devices exploded, and amid Israel's bombardment of Lebanon. The missile launched by Hezbollah was intercepted by the Israeli air defense system. But yesterday's missile barrage is proof that Israel runs the risk of real damage in case Mossad is targeted.
Now let's go back to the basics, the most elementary question. If the war escalates, who will win? Israel or Iran? Which country has the edge? Is it Israel with its high-tech weapons, or is it Iran with its raw numerical advantage? Let's go through all the data and see how they stack up. First, let's look at the overall numbers. Iran is home to almost 92 million people. Israel's population is about a tenth of that at 9.4 million. So you can imagine their military personnel figures reflect this. Iran has 610,000 active troops, 610,000, 350,000 reserve fighters and 220,000 paramilitary personnel. Altogether, that's 1.18 million people in the Iranian army. What about Israel? Well, they have 170,000 active duty personnel, 465,000 reservists and 35,000 paramilitary troops, coming to a total of 670,000. That's a little more than half of Iran's military figures. So Israel seems outmanned. Now, we can argue that the numbers do not matter because everyone in Israel is trained to fight. They're all trained fighters. This country has mandatory military service. Almost all Israelis serve in the armed forces for 2.5 to 3 years. Well, here's the thing. Iran has that too, mandatory military service. But in Iran, it's just for the men. But think about the huge population difference between Iran and Israel. It means that Iran has a lot more people who know how to fight or who've been trained on how to fight. So an all-out war would probably favor Iran in terms of sheer manpower. It's the same when we look at tank figures, armored vehicle numbers, stored artillery, mobile rocket projectors. On the ground, it's Iran that comes out on top. And it's the same situation at sea. Israel doesn't really have a noteworthy navy. Look at the numbers. No frigates, no destroyers, no aircraft carriers, and 5 submarines compared to Iran's 19. Iran's navy isn't great either, but it beats Israel in most parameters. So by the looks of it, Iran has the edge on the ground and the sea. However, those figures probably won't matter much because Tehran won't be launching a naval blockade and a standard land war is not really an option for either side. Let's look at the map of West Asia. You have Israel on one side and the Mediterranean coast. Then you have several countries in between, and then comes Iran. Israel is not marching through Jordan and Iraq to invade Iran. That is impractical. And if Iran tries to do this, Israel can just pick the troops off from above. No Iranian convoy or tank column is going to reach Israel. So face-to-face fighting probably won't happen. Therefore, manpower doesn't really matter much. Ground and sea superiority won't help either. The real battle here is in the air. And that is where Israel shines. Let's compare. Fighter jets, Israel 241, Iran 186. Dedicated attack craft, Israel 39, Iran 23. Attack helicopters, Israel 48, Iran 13. You get the picture. Israel has far greater numbers in the air, and that's not even the deciding factor. It's the quality of the Israeli Air Force that really gives it superiority. Iran is flying antiques. Fighter jets from the 60s and the 70s. It acquired these planes before the Iranian Revolution of 1979. So Iran has a squadron of old American F-4s and 5s. One squadron of the Russian Su-24s and some other jets here and there. That's what Iran has. On the other side, you have Israel with state-of-the-art F-15s, F-16s, and of course, F-35 stealth fighters. Iran has no answer to this. A squadron of F-4s from 1960 won't do much to a modern F-35, not unless they get very lucky. So Israel is almost unchallenged in the skies. If a full-scale war breaks out, Israel will depend on this aerial superiority and it will try and lay waste to Iran, like with Gaza and now Lebanon. But it won't be the same. It won't be as easy because Tehran is not without its own pointy ends. Iran knows that it can compete in the skies. It cannot compete in the skies, not in the conventional dogfights or aerial raids. And it has known this for years, which is why it came up with a different plan for the air. Instead of jets and helicopters, Iran relies on missiles and drones. The pride of the pack is the Shahed 136, Iran's best-known kamikaze drone. They're relatively cheap to make, they're easy to use, and they can swarm the enemy. Israel has dozens of fighter jets. Iran has hundreds, if not thousands of drones. When it all comes to aerial bombardment, it will be quality versus quantity. Will Israel be able to take down Iranian drones every day? Not to mention missiles like the Fateh 1 and 2, Iran's indigenous hypersonic missiles. To win an aerial war, Iran needs to shoot down about 240 jets. Israel, however, needs to shoot down dozens of projectiles every single day. It's a tough fight to call. Or it would be if this was a purely military contest, but it's not. With Israel versus Iran, other factors also come into play, like economics. Israel is one of the richest countries in West Asia. Iran has been suffering under sanctions for years. It has 10 times Israel's population, but a lower GDP. And that is sustained due to oil and weapon exports. What happens if Israel blows up Iranian oil refineries or drone factories? What happens to Iran's economy? To the ordinary people of Iran? It's not a situation that Tehran can really afford, especially in the event of a war. So the economy is Israel's trump card. In fact, Israel has an even bigger advantage, something that Iran cannot compete with at all. Israel has the United States. There are normal allies. Iran has those. It is friendly with Russia and China, not bad to have as support. But they won't back Iran the way the Americans will back Israel. If Israel comes under attack, the US will step in. No matter who is right or wrong, no matter who is president of America, if Israel is on the back foot, America will come in all guns blazing, and that may be the deciding factor in this war. Now let's talk about Pakistan and Russia. You heard it right. Pakistan and Russia, they've struck a new trade deal. And this is not your usual trade deal, where money changes hands. Pakistan and Russia will barter goods instead, like in the olden days. Pakistan will supply tangerines and rice to Russia, and in return, Russia will export chickpeas and lentils. Reports say Moscow may start a similar barter system with China as well. So basically, Russia is expanding trade ties with two geopolitical adversaries of India. How should New Delhi see this? Our next report tells you.
A barter. It's the oldest way to engage in trade. If you need something from someone, you simply swap it for something you have but no longer need. Long before currency notes came into existence, bartering was how nations and people did business. History seems to be repeating itself now. Russia and Pakistan have reached a barter deal. Russia will export chickpeas and lentils. In exchange, Pakistan will supply tangerines, potatoes, and rice. This barter deal has been struck by private companies on both sides. It was perhaps the only way out. Russia faces international sanctions. They have choked Russian banks. Cross-border payments have become a hassle. So perhaps the only feasible alternative was a barter. It's a win-win for both sides. Russia and Pakistan get the food supplies they need without spending a penny on them. But this arrangement may not sit well with India. New Delhi has been wary of Moscow's outreach to Islamabad. Just last month, Pakistan declared its intention to join BRICS. Currently, Russia holds the BRICS chairmanship. It received Islamabad's application and swiftly endorsed it. Pakistan and Russia also have a military relationship. Both sides have been engaging in drills together. Russia, despite being India's biggest military supplier, sold attack helicopters to Pakistan in 2015. 6 years later, in 2021, Russia pledged to provide more weapons to Pakistan. Now, the economic ties are gaining momentum. 2023 was a milestone year for both sides. Pakistan's trade with Russia reached $1 billion, a new record. This comes as Russia is trying to strengthen its economic ties with India. The Russian president himself has praised India's economic policies in the past.
Countries with substantial influence in international affairs, like India with its 1.5 billion people and over 7% GDP growth, deserve representation and the opportunity to contribute to resolving global issues. India's high-tech exports are growing exponentially, making it stronger each year under Prime Minister Modi's leadership.
Russia's barter deal with Pakistan is a move born out of necessity. Western sanctions have undoubtedly limited Moscow's choices. But even Putin knows that he must tread carefully. India has been a long-standing friend for Russia, yet Moscow's deepening ties, first with China and now with Pakistan, could create tension. In geopolitics, even something as simple as chickpeas and rice can muddy the waters.
Now, let me say what we've all been thinking. It's been a heavy day with all the wars and geopolitical turmoil, and it's only Wednesday. So let's end on a lighter note. Our last story tonight is about bald ibis. These are migratory birds known for their bald red head and long curved beak. 300 years ago, they went extinct in Central Europe. But thanks to breeding efforts, they have come back from extinction. But because they were gone for centuries, they have forgotten how to migrate. So scientists are teaching them how to do it by flying along with them and showing them the way and shouting words of encouragement. Here's a report.
300 years. That's how long Central Europe did not see a bald ibis for. Bald ibis or waldrops are known for their bald red head and long curved beak. They were once common across North Africa and much of Europe, but they were considered a delicacy, so they were widely hunted and their habitats were destroyed due to rampant deforestation. So their numbers dropped and they went extinct in Central Europe. But scientists increased efforts to boost their populations. And over the past 2 decades, they've been successful. Now their numbers are close to 800, and the bald ibis have come back from extinction in Central Europe. But there's a catch. Bald ibis are migratory birds, but they no longer know how to migrate. They don't know where to go or which course to take because they didn't receive guidance from their wild ancestors. Migratory birds rely on learned information that's passed down to them. The new generation of wild ibis doesn't have that privilege, and this is a cause for concern. Without the knowledge of direction, the bald ibis will not know where to fly for winter. They still have the natural urge to migrate, so they try to fly. But over the past few years, when the birds did try to migrate on their own, instead of reaching suitable wintering grounds, they flew in different directions and died. So scientists are stepping in. They are acting as the birds' foster parents. Have you watched the 1996 movie Fly Away Home? In the movie, the main character flies a plane to show orphaned geese their migratory path. Now scientists are doing something similar in real life. Researchers aboard a small plane are teaching birds how to migrate, how to follow their long-forgotten migration routes. And a battalion of 36 endangered birds are diligently following the aircraft from Austria to Spain. Scientists are using parenting techniques. They are building a bond with the birds so that the bald ibis trusts them. They are waving at the birds and shouting encouragement at them as they fly. Now, that's some good parenting. The project is still underway. The trip could take 50 days to complete. This is the first such attempt to reintroduce migratory species, and scientists hope that it's successful. Because with climate change, the warming world is changing how birds migrate. For migration, timing is key. So with spring shifting earlier and blooms popping out of schedule, hundreds of bird species have had to change not only their own timing, but also their paths. And in many cases, this proves deadly. While a few scientists cannot stop climate change, maybe they can teach the birds how to migrate differently.
So all this news of escalation and attacks, most of the world is quite depressed by it. They're concerned about the possible fallout. Not social media, though. It's a whole different world out there. One that is joking about World War III. Granted, it is disturbing, but it's also a commentary on the times we live in. Violence and deaths do not shake people anymore. They become used to hearing about it. Just look at the shift. Talk of world wars used to trigger shortages and food rationing. But now it is triggering a meme fest. And just to be clear, this could be the start of a regional war, but a world war is not on the card. Vantage shots images that tell the story. Claudia Sheinbaum is sworn in as Mexico's first female president. In India, an Air Force chopper makes an emergency landing in flood-hit Bihar. In Russia, rescuers save 4 stranded killer whales. And finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1869, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was born in India's Gujarat. Mahatma Gandhi played a pivotal role in India's independence. He shares his birthday with Lal Bahadur Shastri, the second Prime Minister of India. He was born in Uttar Pradesh in 1904. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Начался прилив. Надеемся, что все будет хорошо.